Today's guest is April Hickey, and this conversation gets real fast. We talk about burnout, leadership, and what happens when you stop enjoying the thing you worked so hard to build. It's honest, it's human, and it's deeply relatable. What does toast actually mean? Where did it come from?
Toast refers to like toasting your 9-to-5 goodbye, or you can also have like get that bread. So when we were looking at our name for the company, we had a bunch of different names that we thought of, and then toast was just the punchiest, best one. And it definitely fits the company now. I can't imagine it being called anything else now.
Yeah. And when did the company actually start?
We were founded in July of 2022, but we did not launch until January of 2023. Yeah.
In your TEDx talk, you define this idea of a box that I think so many people can relate to, whether they realize it up front or not. Mm-hmm. Can you define what that box looks like and then tell me when you started to feel like you recognized that you were in that box?
Yeah, I think the box is very subjective to everyone else, but it kind of refers to labels almost. And I think very quickly, no matter what area of our life we're in, we put labels on other people, whatever that looks like. And we label ourselves too. And as I discussed in my TED Talk, I think that it really holds us back, unfortunately. We're very quick to put people inside of a box, and it feels really comfortable to meet someone and be like, oh, this is who I believe that this person is, or your first impression of them. And I think we jump to conclusions on who people are very quickly without fully understanding their whole story. I don't think there's a single person in the world that you could talk to that you wouldn't fall in love with their story if you actually sat down and talked to them. But on the flip side, I think that we do that to ourselves often as well. And I hear that from women, especially at Toast, and women that we chat with who are like, oh, I can't do that, or I'm not technical, or whatever, when really we all could be technical, or we all could do anything. And I actually genuinely believe that if I wanted to be, and this might be very cocky, but if I wanted to be a doctor today, I could go be a doctor. I mean, I would have to take the steps to do that. I would have to go to school and learn things, and it might take me longer than other people because maybe I'm not as bright as other people who have dreamed of being a doctor their whole lives. But realistically, the limitations we put on ourselves are because of those boxes we put ourselves in, or the labels we put ourselves in. And I think ensuring that you're always thinking outside of that and not limiting yourself with specific labels or the quote unquote box, I think is how really we can live into our true selves every day.
I really like the framing that you put it in there, because I think everybody understands the idea of the box, but they usually think it's like outside inward, driven,
Yes.
Whereas you define it as something that you're putting yourself in. Is that a new concept? Do you talk, when you talk to people, do they kind of like agree with what I just said, that it's fresh?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know that. I think unfortunately, it's almost around bias too. So I think we often understand that we put other people in a box. And whenever we're called on it, we understand the limitations that we've put on other people. But thinking about it inwardly, I would say is something probably a new development. I talk often about the next generation. I'm a mom and I'm a millennial. And I believe that we're the first trauma-informed generation of parents coming through. My parents definitely did not go to therapy. And honestly, even growing up, for me, people who went to psychologists or went to therapy or were really focused on growth or self-awareness, any of these things, you would often just think that person might be a little crazy. And so it's probably a little fresh because we're actually putting words to what these things are, even though they have existed. And obviously there are a lot of people who have broken outside of boxes and done really cool things in their lives, but maybe actually naming it and having conversations about it is probably new, I would say, in the past couple of years, for sure.
Drawing back on what you're talking about there, the stigmatization of these words, of these practices, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
Why do you think that exists, and how do we even start to break that?
I think Bell Let's Talk Day, I will say, is the first time that I remember in recent years. That was probably like 2012, I would say, when that started coming out, and we started trying to reduce bias, because you would never say in the workplace before that you were going to a therapist appointment. And I love the way they framed it to be like, if you're going to a doctor's appointment, you tell people all the time, but this is a doctor for your brain. Why do we not talk about this? So I would say over the past 15 years, we've had way more open conversations about this. There's still a lot of stigmas to be removed, but every single person that I know has a brother, mother, sister, friend, whoever, who has struggled with mental health. And these stigmas persist around, getting better, working on ourselves, understanding our place in things. I'm really fascinated by the changes in workplaces right now that we're seeing around this and how openly workplaces are looking to support people. Just this morning, my first meeting here this morning actually was with an organization that actually actively helps leaders become more self-aware and show up with empathy. Because there's research that shows as your IQ goes up, your EQ goes down. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. And so we put these people who are individual contributors, great leaders, really smart people, we put them into these roles with other people. However, their EQ is actually dropping at the same time. And so I think having open conversations reduces that stigma around it, and also kind of pushes other people to look inwards themselves. The more that we see people talking about their own issues or things they're overcoming, I think it actually opens that door so other people can look to get that help for themselves as well.
That idea is exemplified by like Elon Musk leaders, right? Like people like that, where they just like have absolutely no EQ to any
the
of
brilliant
their team.
asshole.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
The brilliant jerk. The brilliant jerk, that's what it's called.
I like that.
Yes, that's the term of it. If you look that up, there are a lot of those inside of organizations.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's like speaking to that point, like realistically, I think a lot of people kind of exemplify that, right? Or they think they have to be that to achieve the success of these individuals that we're looking at. Obviously you disagree with that. How does a leader now these days, or what is the composition of a good leader in your eyes?
In 2018, Google did a research project and they called it Project Aristotle. Have you heard about it? So they were looking for the key components of a high-performing team. And the number one thing that they found, and granted, we talk a lot about this now, but back then this was quite groundbreaking. But in 2018, they found that it was psychological safety. And so that ability for people to share when they were making mistakes was a big piece of it too, to talk about failures. We all know if someone's trying to cover up a mistake they've made at work, it's a harder thing, but creating that psychological safe space for your team members actually can improve revenue. It can improve productivity, all of these different pieces. And I think that was kind of a catalyst, specifically at Google it was, on how do we provide leaders with better EQ training and ensure that they're taking care of themselves as well. A lot of the leaders that I've seen fail, if you will, in this area, it was because they self-imploded from burnout as well. And so when I look at a leader and what I think would be someone who's really high performing and a really successful leader and someone that people look up to, because a leader is not just in a title. Let's first define that. You're not just a leader by title. You're a leader if people actually want to follow you and actually want to listen to the things that you are sharing or believe in the things that you are pushing forward. And so in order to do that, a good leader actually has to take care of themselves. And I think that we forget about that often. We think about all the ways that we pour out of our cup and don't think about how we fill it. And so I'm fiercely protective of my own time. And I think the way that we've been sold self-care is actually self-soothing. Someone, Roselle Gonzalez, who's the head of diversity, inclusion, and equity at ATB Financial, actually shared that with me. And I remember when she said it, I was like, that's so true, because we could go as leaders and then go for a massage or have a spa day. And that's actually not going to fix us or replenish us enough to continuously pour. And so real self-care is like boundaries, saying no to coffee chats, not caring if people are going to be mad at me because I couldn't go to every single event that week, and ensuring that you're protecting your time so that you don't completely burn out. So when I look at a leader, yes, it is someone who is like very clear on their goals. It's someone who delegates to your team and trusts your team to do that. It's someone who's very honest, clear as kind. I say that all the time. I had to give some very harsh feedback to a team member last week, and I started it by saying, I'm going to tell you right now that if I'm not being clear with you, I'm not being kind. Here's where you missed the mark. This is what it is. Here's how I'm going to support you. Here's the things that I want from you. And those are important pieces. But on top of that, if I'm not taking care of myself and I don't have very strong boundaries in my life, I'm not going to be a good leader. And I have seen someone very close to me completely self-implode as a leader because they actually didn't take care of themselves. And when we talk about self-care, I talk about a self-care pie all the time because there's so many pieces to it. So for me, in my self-care pie, I have my psychologist. I've been with the same one It's our 10-year anniversary this year. I'm very excited to still have her by my side. That's important to me. I need to move my body every day, whether that's going for a walk, like a meeting walk, or actually working out. I need to make sure I'm eating healthy. That's also really important to me. I feel like shit if I eat like shit all the time, as well as like spending time with people that I love. But to me, it's also alone time. I need alone time, even if that's, you know, I work from home, so I don't have a commute in my car by myself. So however I can find that, all of these pieces together enable me to show up as a good leader. And if one of those pieces is missing, I can't show up in a great way for other people to want to follow me and trust me and believe in me. Yeah.
So I love the way that you put it. And I think the boundaries is the key there, because like you said, it's not about going for that cold plunge in the morning. It's about saying no to that thing.
Yes.
And I think
protecting your time.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. A result of saying no realistically to the things that aren't aligned. Right?
Totally.
That is easy to say, you know, when we're chatting about it. And a lot harder, especially because I think in practice, because a lot of these people, especially young entrepreneurs, people are starting their business, they're told to say yes, right? They're told you can't shut down opportunity. This is, you know, you never know where it's going to lead, whatever the case may be. How did you navigate that in the early stages of your business and decide what to say no to?
Yeah, I burnt out fully. I did in the first year of Toast because I did say yes to everything. My assistant at the time was literally scheduling showers into my calendar because there was no time for me to shower, which in hindsight is just absolutely insane. I think it's really important to know, because yes, you're right. Some partnerships or coffees that you think are just going to be coffee chats can absolutely turn into something down the line. But again, you have to have like those boundaries in your time. So whatever that looks like. And in that first year, after I did burn out by saying yes to everything, Fridays, I have a block from noon to 5 p.m. called Big Desk Energy. And it's where I catch up with everything, or I like schedule in some of those other coffee chats that may be just community, ecosystem chats, things of the sort. And if I actually am like tired by the end of the week, I don't schedule anything in those things. And I make that a non-negotiable those times. And I actually push my team to do that as well. Just like put blocks in your calendar intentionally. If people, and my leader told me this as well with the coffee chat piece. My mentor told me that if people really want to meet with you, they will find a way to meet you. And so if I'm like capped out for coffee chats or strategy talks or anything like that, I will reply by being like, I'll be at the Tech Thursday holiday event tonight. And if someone really wants to talk to you, they'll go find you at an event that you're at. And I think it is important to get out into the community and do that, because you can push 5 people together to come see you at an event, and then you can have those conversations there. But it is like, you have to be fiercely protective of that other time that is like quiet time for you as well, because you won't be able to show up for any coffee chats if you don't have that.
I want to lean into this burnout piece for a second, because it's something that everybody's scared of. Everybody's aware that it exists. And I don't know, there's a lot of speculation whether people actually experience it or not, because they think they experience it sooner than they maybe do.
Yes.
It's not for me to decide what that feels like. For you, what did that burnout feel like? And how did you come out of that place?
It was a really dark and hard spot for me to pull myself out of. I had lost like excitement for all the things that I was doing. I was so fatigued every day that I could barely get out of bed to do things that I wanted and was actually excited to do. The fatigue was absolutely constant. But I think the loss of excitement around things that I usually used to get very excited about was something that really scared me. And it started, I had warning signs sooner. I had a panic attack, 5-6 months before I actually feel like I hit burnout. And so for me, it was like that bottom of the barrel where I was like, someone can buy this company off me for $10 right now, and I'd be happy to walk away from it. I knew I was at a place where I actually had to take care of myself. But again, I wasn't doing anything for myself. There was no boundaries around my time. All I was doing was things for the company, not thinking about my own sustainability. And so for me, rest is a strategy. Rest makes me sustainable and allows me to continue building this company. But unfortunately, it took me getting to that like hard place where I could barely get out of bed before I recognized the problem that I had.
I know from your story that you went from, an entry-level employee to a director over the course of, I think, several years, right? And so I'm curious, and then obviously after you started your business, it's a completely different experience for many different reasons. But I'm curious, to have accomplished that first feat, to go from entry-level employee to director is obviously no small feat. It takes a lot of hard work and grit and that sort of thing. Compare that, the work that you did there in that kind of avenue of your life or that period of your life to being an entrepreneur, and maybe just contrast those for me.
Oh gosh, this is the hardest job I've ever had in my whole life, by far. I would say it took a lot of grit. It took a lot of navigating people. I'm really grateful that I grew up in a home with an alcoholic parent because it taught me how to navigate people, honestly, and bring different versions of myself to different conversations, which was great.
Can you dive into that for a second?
Yeah,
what do you mean by
sure.
that, navigating people based on an alcoholic parent?
Yeah, I think children who grew up in an unstable home are fond of control, obviously, because when you grow up in a home that is so unstable, you're not really sure when the lion's going to come out. And so I often would have to tailor what version of me I didn't know what version of my parent I was going to get that day. Some days they were like very joyful, very playful, very excited. And then other days it was like, if I even breathed the wrong way, the abuse may ensue. And so it was almost like a sociology degree navigating a parent in a home like that. And then you get to a place where you're at a big four and you have a million different partners, all these different stakeholders, all these different people. I became really good, thankfully, because of my childhood, at reading the room very quickly and understanding and then adapting my kind of approach. I can be very not belligerent. I can be very bold and very aggressive in the way that I speak. And that's just my natural way of being. And I was able to figure out, when to pull that back a little bit, which helped me navigate the politics of a giant enterprise like that. 65% of my job at a big four was navigating people in politics by far. And I was really good at it because I grew up in a home where I had to kind of adapt to those types of situations. But with all of that being said, nothing in the world could have prepared me for hanging onto this rocket ship that is like flying through the air full speed that has been like starting my own company. Yeah, it's been, I don't even know how to describe it actually. Because you don't know what you're doing. You have absolutely no idea what you're doing. You're trusting your intuition. I came from a role at a bank where I was running a team that was very data focused. We were a product ops team that we had built from scratch. And so, that part of me wanted data to make decisions often. And I would have to remind myself that my intuition is data. And sometimes you're just making decisions as quickly as you can on the fly with no support, with no one to pat you on the head. That was something, external validation was always very important to me because I never got that growing up and I didn't always believe in myself. So you have no external validation. No one's there to pat you on the head to tell you you're doing a good job. And no one's there telling you to take a break or use your mandatory vacation time because there is none. And every single dollar counts towards feeding my children, right? So the pressure is suffocating in a way that it was not ever like that. The stakes just weren't as high when you're in corporate.
In that place where you're suffocating yourself, essentially, to use your words, which I totally agree with. What's most important? Looking back on that time, obviously you can look back with 2020 and be like, hey, this is what I needed and this is how I needed to approach it. But, was it mentors? Was it a community of somebody or people that are going through the same thing or similar? What would you give advice to for those people that are maybe experiencing that for the first time?
It's going to sound very woo-woo, but I think it's just hope. And a mutual friend of ours once told me her and I went through a same level of adversity and when we used to work together. And she said to me, and I quote, she will watch this. She told me she built a whole house out of hope and moved her whole family into it. And when I did the Brene Brown's exercise to find your 2 core values years ago, mine were hope and making a difference. And years later, I redid that exercise again this year in January, the same 2. Integrity came very close, but hope and making a difference were still the same 2. And for me, Hope doesn't need adversity to exist. However, I truly believe that having a positive outlook and hoping that everything is going to work out in the end is the only thing that has carried me through all of that insanely hard stuff, specifically with this company. Yeah.
your business is built around an idea that you stand behind. You have conviction for. Obviously, that's no secret.
Yeah.
Is that conviction enough to keep you going, to keep you holding your boundaries, to keep you showing up every day, to keep doing what you're doing? Or is there other things that kind of push you that direction?
Yeah,
as well?
I mean, not every day. Also, we're a social enterprise. And so we're constantly balancing purpose and profit, right? And I think standing in our values is something very important to us. And that conviction has carried us through some really tough times. But I mean, as a founder, I think often about, my 9 employees and the mortgages that they all carry that rely on us making the right decision as well. And so it is this balance where there are times where I want to lean so deeply into our purpose, but I have to remember that we need profit as well. Very unique position to be a social enterprise. And a lot of companies are just like profit, profit, profit. So I would say, it is our North Star. It helps me make a lot of decisions, thankfully. But I would say that thinking about my team has been like a very close second in terms of like what is the best thing for the business. And it's interesting when you are a business owner, I do have to put the business first often. And so this like dichotomy, because not necessarily everything that's really great for the purpose is always good for the business. And I live in this weird space where I am like holding both up. Typically our values win almost every day, but there are days where I have to be like, okay, we have to compromise on a couple of these things because this client needs this. We have to compromise a little bit, but let's have a conversation with them and try and get them like closer to where we need to be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you described it perfectly. That dichotomy exists when you have to balance those two things. And I think this idea, I love how you put it, the way that you have to put the business first. And that's something that's thrown around a lot, but I'm curious as to what that means for you. Does that mean like, the business is its own entity and you are serving that business and obviously you know what's best for it? Or what does that look like?
I mean, I think early stages, some of the toughest pieces of running a business are the people. And especially when you're early stages, you probably have very close relationships with the people that you're building with. And I think when I think about protecting the business or putting the business first, sometimes you have to make really hard decisions in regards to people or clients or things of the sort. Like I've had to let people go who I really, really respect and admire. Unfortunately, that was the best thing for the business. So in times like that, I think, I have a responsibility to all the other people who work inside of the business to keep that at the forefront of all of our decisions as well. And so I think it's interesting. I heard someone share that earlier this year that the biggest mistake, I was at the CCI CEO Summit in September in Toronto, and this founder who has like 2,000 employees now was saying the biggest mistake he ever made was not putting the business first and caring too much about the people sometimes because we have empathy and we want to do the right thing by them. But at the end of the day, that's when profit wins over people. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to bounce back a little bit on your comment about, early trauma and how that kind of affected how you can handle people and notice things that maybe other people don't, et cetera. Speaking from experience from previous conversations that I've had with people that are open about childhood trauma, et cetera, they become people pleasers as they grow up because they're like, to your point that you also identified, it was, you're seeking this external validation, whether it be true or not. Right.
Yeah.
Did you ever experience that? Yeah,
I think for me, it wasn't so much people pleasing. I've always been someone who's very argumentative and almost like self-righteous. So I will fight for what I think is fair often and have since I was a very young girl. But what has come out of my childhood trauma is in that fight or flight piece, I fawn, which is the other one. And so if I feel that I'm in a situation which is unsafe, or if I feel that someone's yielding power over me for a lot of years, I would typically try and overcompensate by like ensuring that I was safe. There's a way to make myself safe. And I did that again with an unstable parent at home. And I saw myself doing that in roles. Actually, this year was the first year there was a situation that came up this year where, and I have a board of directors, I have a member on my board who her and I both are trying to break this fawn piece that we have. She has a very similar background as me. She's incredible. And both of us have like shared stories where we've been in situations and texted each other and been like, I didn't fawn this time. I didn't fawn. Because I think it's not even so much people pleasing, so much as not really standing up for yourself in situations that aren't right too. And that was something I really had to unlearn. And I think you have to work on your confidence and make sure that you have a strong foundation to stand on and really believe in who you are. And that was something over the last year that I've been working on. I went to my psychologist and I was like, listen, I am very seen. Like I'm on the cover of magazines and I am winning awards and I'm a CEO and all these things, but I don't always feel seen. And she was like, well, April, you know why that is? And I was like, yeah, it's because my parents didn't see me. And she was like, no, idiot, it's because you don't see you. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's like such a big, important thing. And so I put all this emphasis on really seeing me. And from there, I was able to break those bad habits of fawning, people pleasing, whatever it may be, because I really saw my own value in situations. And so I was able to actually stand up for myself, which honestly I did earlier this year. And it was probably the greatest decision I ever made in my life. It was the first time I really did that. And in the Chinese zodiac, everything is in different animal years. And this year was the year of the snake, 2025. And so people were shedding things all over. You'll talk to people from all over in 2025. We were shedding pieces of ourselves that no longer fit. So we could become into 2026's year of the horse. So we can start running on a new version of ourselves. And I really feel like that's exactly what happened to me this year. Yeah.
That's really interesting, and I want to lean into that a little bit because obviously you're in a unique position, right? Like you said, cover of magazines, a ton of publicity, et cetera, still not feeling seen personally. But I feel like others might still identify with that, even if they're slightly being seen, or maybe not even at all. I think maybe truly it would be hard for them to identify whether they are being seen externally if they don't understand themselves first.
Yes.
So yeah. What are you working through? How are you, you mentioned that you are doing the work. What does that work look like for those who are listening?
Yeah, I have a picture of myself when I was a little girl on my office wall, actually, which is really cute because I think all the time about how cool she would think this version of me is. And just, man, that little girl deserved everything. I look at that picture. I'm wearing a beret in it, by the way, too. I had a great fashion sense when I was a child as well. And that like inner child work, looking at her often and knowing that she deserves everything. And then seeing how far I've come from there. I think we move so quickly, especially as founders, and we have all these targets and we get this gold medal syndrome. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but that gold medal syndrome is real when you come into a position like this, specifically when you have success with your business. And just bringing myself back to that younger version of myself and reminding myself who she was all the time is a big piece of the work that I've been doing over the past year.
Gold medal syndrome, define that for those who maybe don't know.
Yeah, it's a very common terminology in terms of like if a founder exits or an Olympian, finally wins their gold medal or you get these awards or whatever it may be. And then you actually reach it and then you realize that it actually doesn't mean anything. Nothing's any different. Your kids still wake up and demand Cheerios and you go on the street and get your coffee and nobody knows what happened to you. Do you know what I mean? Like everything is the same and you build up this idea in your head of what this is going to be and then you reach it and then you start worrying, did I peak? Is this like all of it? And this like almost depression kind of sets in. And it's a reminder and the work to be done to avoid this gold medal syndrome is to remind people that the journey is the piece. You're not like specifically aiming for one thing. Like, yeah, you're going to get your exit or yeah, you're going to get your gold medal or whatever. But if you're not happy in the journey to get there, you're going to get there and it's not going to mean anything to you. And I've spoken to so many people. One of my best friends made partner at a firm this year, and she's been chasing this thing her whole life. She's 41 years old. All she ever wanted to do was make partner. And we were talking about gold medal syndrome, and she was like, yeah, the day after I made partner, I was like walking down the street and like, no one cares. And it's like another day, you just wake up and it's another day, but you build up this thing in your head. And she's like, and then I got there and I was like, oh, it's nothing. And then we were talking about the regrets we had on not just enjoying all of this. And so I've been talking about this over the past year. There's going to be a time where I am no longer like the darling, where I'm not on magazine covers and Forbes doesn't want to talk to me and none of these things exist. And I don't want to look back and see that I didn't enjoy it. And so I continuously am reminding myself to sit and like doing a podcast like this. How cool is this that I even get to share my story or my knowledge or my opinions with other people? There's going to be a time where no one wants to have me on their podcast. And I want to make sure that I've sat in these moments and been like, wow, this is really cool. And like, good for you, April, that you were able to do these things, because it's all of this stuff together that makes the journey what's so cool. Not just if I sell toast one day. That may or may not happen. The company may crumble and go under, who knows? But all of these pieces that take us to that moment, actually sitting and enjoying those is so incredibly important. I think we forget about that as founders.
Absolutely. It's a breeze by, right? It's like it becomes part of the process.
Totally. Even like putting your first employee on payroll. How cool is that? Celebrate those things. Or paying yourself your first dividend, like, or hitting your targets, you know, those are massive, massive pieces. Or overcoming, because it's going to be peaks and valleys. I'm just coming out of a valley that our revenue dipped. It's back on the upswing, but I'm like, okay, we pulled ourselves out of a tough time. Good for you, April. That was the first time you came into that as a CEO. Good for you. And those are all pieces of it. They taught me something. And now next time a valley happens, I'm going to be better prepared to deal with it again.
Along that idea of peaks and valleys, I think like it's not uncommon to describe, you know, business as like a sine wave, right? You're going up and down, and here you are, right? And exactly as you described. The key, or I think one of the commonalities that I've found among founders, also not a secret, is the fact that they handle these in a more approachable way. They basically lessen that sine wave, right? They make it less of a, how do you do that? You know, to ensure that you're still celebrating your wins, as you mentioned, when you're on a peak, but also you're not getting drawn down by those valleys too much, and you keep it kind of consistent as much as possible.
Yeah, I would tell everyone on the planet to get a board. I think people don't understand how important it is to have other people to call you on your bullshit, to keep you grounded, to ensure, because even when I would go to my board in the middle of this valley and be like, this is a valley, and everyone's like, yeah, they happen, April. What are you doing to take care of yourself? That's okay. We have this plan. Trust the strategy, And having other people pull me out of my head in those moments, I tell other founders all the time, even if you don't want to give them ESOP, even if you just need your own personal board of directors, whatever that is, I think having other people to keep us grounded is incredibly important. And it's enabled me to not see them as such big peaks and valleys. You need external, if you don't have a co-founder too, like I don't, I think it's an important piece to keep you grounded, to understand where you're going, and to make sure that you don't get sucked into that too much, because that is business. It really is. And every other founder I've ever spoken to, when I'm like complaining about things, I called another founder recently, and I was like, oh, our revenue's down from last year this quarter. And she told me that her revenue last year this quarter was $500,000. And this year, this quarter is 40,000. So she was like, I was like, oh, well, that's way worse than mine is, but that's awful. But it's a good reminder that we're not alone. And I think that's an important piece, is to surround yourself with other people who can remind you that these things happen.
I think that's a big barrier for some people is identifying. I mean, they know that they know what they feel, right? Everybody knows that they may feel alone, whatever the case may be, but maybe they don't know where to look for people that are experiencing similar, or can think in a different way, or even experience share. How did you go about that?
I think I've been very lucky. One of my superpowers is definitely building relationships. And so that comes very naturally to me. I've recognized as I've gotten older that not everyone is great at that all the time, but that's why communities like this exist, right? We're currently recording this at a community for founders, and there are spaces like this. We call them third spaces, and they're slowly disappearing from our communities, but they're still there, specifically in Canada. Every one of the big centers I've ever been to has a place like that. And I think surrounding yourself with like-minded people, growing, like joining memberships, whatever that looks like, even in terms of a co-working space, that's where you can meet your same people. There's third spaces everywhere still for everyone.
You said in there that you feel like they're dying. I'm curious. You just think there's less of them?
Yeah, I actually read an article about that just last week, that third spaces are dying, or people aren't even going out to them as much. More and more people are just kind of like staying home and retreating. The world's a pretty crazy place right now, which I understand why people are retreating a little more. I remember when I was a youth, again, I'm aging myself, but even like 25 years ago, there were a lot of like youth centers where you could go to. And I, again, didn't have a really great home life. And I used to go to places like that. It was literally just a place in a mall that had a bunch of couches and other kids would hang out there. And you don't see things like that as much anymore. So when this opened up in Calgary, I was the first one to talk to the founder to be like, I want in, I want to be able to, and you know, you and I before recording this, we're having a conversation with another founder. I wouldn't never have come across him if it wasn't for coming here to this space. And so now I've used his product. He's used my product. I like bounce things off him. We're both parents. So I've been able to make other connections again with other like-minded people. And I'm sure if I sat there and talked to him about revenue, he'd be able to also calm my fears that I have as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's super odd, right? Because especially at the time of recording, this is 2025, end of 2025. And we came out of COVID, obviously, a couple of years ago, however you want to define that period, which, you know, and these spaces were abundant, or at least the attempt of these spaces were abundant, right? And it's interesting to think that they're dying when now is, you know, they're valued more than ever and they're understood to be important more than ever, right? It's odd.
And I mean, people have found them in virtual spaces as well, which has been positive. At least, you know, we have a way to leverage virtual tools to still keep people engaged as well. So whatever that looks like, I think sometimes it's putting yourself out there is really, really tough, and going somewhere where you don't know anyone is really, really tough. But at least knowing, and I have a 14-year-old son, I've spoken with him often about this as well, at least knowing that you have commonalities, whether it's sports, whether it's whatever it is, you're going to find people. It's usually much bigger in your head than it is before you actually get there and talk to someone.
On that note of virtual spaces, do you find, and this is kind of like neither here nor there topic, but do you find that you can create those same connections that you might in person, like face to face, like we are right now? Or is it a little bit harder? Are there barriers to it? How do you navigate that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm an online girly. I found my niche in virtual work years ago. I helped WestJet. I worked at WestJet in the call center when we were implementing a work from home model there. And that was in like 2012. And so long before COVID existed, I'd been working and we didn't have those same digital tools to keep teams together that we do now. Zoom wasn't a thing back then. We would all email each other. So it was much different. I still think you can build some really strong relationships, and it seems funny, but have kept in touch with people from afar over Instagram even, for example. So I still think there's a lot of value there. I mean, obviously being in person is great as well. And I still make an effort. This is why I travel so much. Sometimes, especially with my clients, it's really important to go be in person with people. But I think you can build it. Yeah. What do you think? Yeah?
Yeah, I think so too. I think there's tools, like you mentioned, that you know, aid us in doing so right now. And I would say it's probably easier now than ever before, but I do think there's a lot of additional connection that you receive in person, right? I think you accomplish so much more in a smaller amount of time. I suppose that's it.
That is 100% it.
You know, because I don't think you can't get there virtually.
Yes.
But the inputs might not be equivalent.
100%. My former co-founder and I would try and get together once a quarter in person. She lived in Toronto and I was in Calgary. And it was incredibly important for us because if we got together, the amount of things that we could do in 2 days in person together was the equivalent of what we would get done in a month when we were working virtually. And I mean, we talked on the phone every day, every single day. But being able to just sit in person together and we would lock ourselves in a room, the amount of things we would get done. And so I do push for teams. I understand. And again, we're a tech platform for recruitment. And I do even say when there's hybrid models, I really support that. I think in terms of workplaces, fully remote works. It does work for a lot of people. I understand that. But I do think hybrid's also a really good model as well. Yeah. I'm anti fully in office though. I don't.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I'm like so against.
Is that because some people just work better virtually, or?
Yeah, I think we live in this world that is not fully built for everyone. Obviously, there's a lot of people who are neurodiverse and like to work in different ways. People need flexibility. People are caregivers for their aging parents, or they have their own kids, or whatever that may look like, and need flexibility. And I just think this an outdated notion that you have to be there at 8. I have a family member who used to work in this role. She's since left it, but she showed up one day for work at 8:04 and her boss tracked her down and was like, you show up at 8:04, you have to leave at 4:34 now to make up the last 4 minutes. Literally, right? And I'm like, people still think like that because one of my good friends runs one of the unicorn companies out of Calgary here. He's super, super successful, got a great big team. And he was telling me how he has unlimited vacation, which we also have at Toast. Unlimited vacation. One of the guys on the team uses double the average of everyone else in the whole company. This guy takes 9 weeks every single year, but he's their top performer. He's just able to get his work done at a way better pace and in a more productive way than everyone else. So if he can take 9 weeks vacation and still outperform everyone else on the team and do his job and get promotions and whatever, why would we put him in a box and like tell him that he has to work 8 to 4 and he can only have 2 weeks vacation? He'd be sitting there wasting company resources, wasting company time, probably doing other things or working a side hustle or something else of the sort. If we forced people into this like box of what they're supposed to work like. There's also myself. I was diagnosed gifted when I was 8 years old and I was medicated, and I struggle hugely with like my neurodiverse brain. But as a founder now, I get to build my own schedule on my own day, which is amazing. And I know I do things like this better if I do them in the morning. In the afternoon, I hit like a lull, so I won't book calls like this in the afternoon. And then at like 8 p.m. after I put my kids to bed, I get a jolt of energy again and I tackle all my admin. So even though there's a bunch of stuff in my inbox right now, I know I'm gonna do it from like 8 to 10 while I watch some shitty TV show at the same time. And I'm able to build that into my day. You know, if I was put into a job where they were like, April, you have to be here from 8 to 4, I wouldn't be able to be as productive as I am right now. And I talk to workplaces and my clients about this often, that we need this flexibility for people for lots of different reasons. But if you trust people and you're hiring people because you trust them to do the job, you just need to move out of the way and let them do it in the way that works for them.
Yes. I mean, that's full circle to the conversation we were talking about earlier, which is essentially the boundary conversation, right? Yes. Like his boundary is that he maybe he needs 9 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. But he's the top performer. So who's anybody to ask?
Well, and I even said, I was like, that guy takes 9 weeks vacation. That's wild. And he gets 120% of his bonus every year because he outperforms everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone. And he's doing it and he still gets his time off. So like, good for him.
Founders with small teams listening need to
100%. Yeah. And they are also fully remote. So this guy works from home. He gets all of his stuff done, and they flagged it to him. They did sit him down and was like, you just so you know, you're double the company average. And he was like, cool. Thanks for letting me know. Like,
no reaction.
No, he was like, but they can't say anything because he's getting his work done.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And we have that, they actually call it a you do you policy. So they have you do you personal days and then you do you vacation days. And they do track them just for analytics purposes. And I found with my own team, we opened up and have unlimited vacation. The problem with that is that my team didn't take enough vacation this year. And so I think it can definitely backfire as well, because we have a fully remote, flexible policy. My product manager and my engineer last year, they just went and worked out of Colombia for a couple months. And so they were like vacationing, but they were also like half working. And I had to tell them like, you guys actually have to take some actual days where you don't open Slack and don't. So I think there's still like parameters to be set around that, but allowing my team, those girls are not going to leave me. They're not going to leave me. They have like the flexibility to do work that they love. They can work from anywhere. I think allowing people, again, hiring them, treating them like adults, and then allowing them to do their best work is going to help with my retention.
Yes.
Yeah.
It takes such a leader to recognize that, though, right? Mm-hmm. And a new way of thinking too, because that, like, 10 years ago, I'm random number, but
totally,
that might not have been the case.
Totally. Yeah. And it's still not. Like I said, I still have clients or people that are like, oh, we require people in office. And I push back sometimes. I'm like, why do you need people in office? And oftentimes it is like a trust thing. Well, I don't know what they're doing at home. It's like, okay, well, you also don't know what they're doing in the office. You don't. And again, if you are neurodiverse at all, I don't get a ton of work done when I'm in an office because I'll just walk around and talk to everyone. I will, and I'll go for multiple coffees, and it's harder for me to hyper focus, which I'm really good at. If I have my headphones on and I'm at home and I'm in my office, I vibe coded an app and solved a problem for my recruiter recruiting team the other night. It took me 4 hours. I had an outside dev team quote me $90,000 to build this tool. I built it on Replit myself the other night because I just had 4 hours to sit down, and I built it. And I woke up the next morning and I was like, I'm Sam Altman, you guys. I was like, just so everyone knows, I fixed this problem. And everyone was like, holy fuck, Abra, how'd you do that? But I'm like, because I just had the space to do it, and I did it late at night. But I think we need to create that space for people to just be creative, work when it works for them, and let them solve problems on their own.
Yeah. And what's to say they can't do the same, right?
And be Sam Altman.
Yes, exactly. Basically. Everybody can be Sam Altman.
Yeah, I built an app one time. Yeah.
Love it. You said in there that, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said it this way, that you were diagnosed as gifted as a young child. I'm curious, walk me through that diagnosis, first of all, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And then also how your perspective on that has changed, because I imagine that's probably changed quite a bit.
Oh gosh, this is my Roman Empire right now. I'm fighting with my son's teacher around neurodiversity right now, which is funny, a grade 8 teacher. She's 26 years old. So I was like, you got a lot of years of teaching ahead of you of a lot of children. I think she needs to like think outside the box. But so I was diagnosed when I was 8 as gifted. And I think at that time, it was like a catch-all phrase for like someone who didn't really fit in. And they didn't know what to do with me. My mom tells this story often, but I was like reading the newspaper when I was 2. Not like the whole newspaper back to front, but I was like reading comics and reading things. And I had this insatiable appetite to learn. And so I got into school, and school was really hard for me because I have a ton of energy. I'm ADHD. They were like, maybe she's got Asperger's, maybe she's got this. Let's like give her a full thing, and let's give her Ritalin, and hopefully she'll like sit down and shut up in school. And it was why school was so incredibly tough for me, because I would do my work before everyone else, and then I would be bored. They would drag my desk out to a hallway and like put a bifold around me so no one would talk to me, and then give me extra work to do to try and keep me busy. So it was really tough. And I think I get really frustrated about ADHD now because I feel like everyone is self-diagnosed ADHD off TikTok these days. Every single adult that I talk to is like, I have ADHD. I'm like, you don't have ADHD, but okay. It's just like such a catch-all phrase. But that being said, we're all neurodiverse. We're all different. We all think differently. We all learn differently. Most people are not auditory learners, which is what school is. Most people are like tactile or like visual learners. And so I think in schools now, we still are holding children back. We're putting them into a box. And I had this conversation with my son's grade 8 teacher the other day because she suggested that my son had ADHD and he doesn't. And he's just a high energy 13-year-old boy. And then she suggested immediately that I medicate him. And I sent her a research that just came out 2 weeks ago in the Wall Street Journal around how all these kids are over-medicated and misdiagnosed with ADHD. The statistics were staggering. 29% of kids who are 3 to 5 in the US who have diagnosis are already medicated at like 3 years old. And it sets them up for this lifetime of being stuck on anti-anxiety pills or antidepressants or whatever it may be. And so I think now we live in this world where people are so flexible. Workplaces are flexible. Schools need to be flexible and accommodate these things as well, because the real world isn't actually that you get a job and then you sit there and you listen to someone drone on from 8 to 2:30 every day. That's not the real world. And so we're not providing kids with the tools that they need or the expectations that they should have going into the workforce in terms of like what that looks like. And I have seen changes. A very close friend of mine, her daughter sounds exactly like me growing up. Very similar diagnoses, very similar struggles that she's having being raised. And I'm happy for that little girl because she has 2 really great parents, and my parents were not equipped or educated enough on my diagnosis. Again, I'm 39 years old, so this is 30 years ago. Nobody knew what to do with girls with ADHD at that time. Now I know it's my superpower. It's not shocking that I ended up being the CEO and running my own company now because I'm able to lean into these things. But it was like, man, it was a tough time back then to go through that. Also, mostly only boys had ADD or ADHD back then. Yeah, they weren't diagnosing girls as much.
Just diagnosing, not necessarily that it was...
Oh, for sure. I'm sure there's lots of girls that were out there that were just like pegged as bad kids, and put in whatever box that they were put into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from your experience and how you've kind of navigated that, what is the ideal, or maybe, your suggestion or your idea for fixing that in the school system or whatever?
My oldest son had a great teacher the past 2 years, and she was fantastic. And she knew that for multiple different kids, they needed different things. She was telling me about one boy in their classroom who had ADHD, and she brought one of those big exercise bouncy balls. And whenever she was lecturing, she would let him bounce in the back of the classroom so it didn't distract any of the other kids. They couldn't see him, but he was able to like move and expel some of that energy and look at her and like listen intently. I used to get feedback when I was at a large corporation that I have a coloring book on my desk, and when I had to sit in webinars or something that required me to listen, I would sit there and color, but it looked like I wasn't paying attention. And I never disclosed my diagnosis before that. There's still stigma there, especially in a big org that I felt that I didn't fit in. And once I finally told her, oh, I'm actually ADHD, and if I'm listening intently, I'm often doing something else with my hands. My husband says often that you can have her gaze or her attention, but not both. And so she was like, oh, well, if you would have told me that, that makes complete sense. And so providing kids with other things, like look at me hand talking as I'm talking to you right now, something else to do with their hands. So my son, as much as he struggled to focus, and I really do not believe he has ADHD, she let him have like a little digger toy at his desk. And so while he was listening, he would like play with his digger. There's different things that work for different kids, and finding what that is as a teacher, especially as an educator, I think is really important. And these conversations I've been having with his current teacher, who I actually don't think likes him very much, I said to her, what are you doing to keep him engaged? Because that's kind of your job too. And if like not everyone is an auditory learner, which is how we teach in schools, what else are you doing? What other projects are you giving him? Can we give him? And we've had teachers who are like, oh, if we tell him to write about hockey, or if we tell him to write about fishing, he will write a whole bunch of things. So like, I think that we need to accommodate people, and honestly, and their different interests and the different ways that they learn. I was at PwC and we were doing a big training program once upon a time, and we had 50 participants in it. And before we kicked off, we polled everyone and got them to do a test on what kind of learner they were. And of all 50, one was an auditory learner. One. Her name was Serena Jetha, and she's still at PwC. She's incredible. But she's the only person that I've ever been the leader of who actually learns that way. People don't learn like this. They want to see things. They want to do it themselves. They want to like visually do it. And schools just haven't caught up with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the curriculum is it takes so long to change that, right? And I mean, let's not even criticize the curriculum, but generally speaking, like it starts with listening, right? Listening to the needs of the people in the classroom, listening to the needs of your staff. Like it's the commonality of the entire conversation we've just had. Is listening and then acting and creating a space where those people can feel heard and do what they need to do to achieve what you expect them to do.
And it is listening. That's such a good piece of it. Because a funny question that I ask all of my employees and when I hire someone is what their love language is too.
Why is that?
It's a good way to learn how they like to be shown that they're appreciated. But also I understand when they're trying to show me appreciation too, because their love language, the way that they want love is probably the same way that they share it. So half of my team is words of affirmation. And then the other half is actually acts of service. So I know when that specific team member is like, when I want to show them appreciation, if I take things off their plate, that's what they're going to really appreciate. Or like, the words of affirmation one is really big because the two gals on my team who are words of affirmation, I probably treat them as oldest daughters all the time. They're so capable, so competent, and they have been there the longest. They hold more knowledge than I do in this company, I swear. And sometimes I just expect that they know that I feel that way about them because we are so close. And I have to remind myself, wait, they're at words of affirmation. If I actually say something like that to them, if I remind them, I think you're capable. I think you are so competent. I'm so happy that you're on my team. I can't imagine this company without you. They'll carry that in their pocket for 4 months and it'll mean the world to them. So I think it's an important piece to understand how people show love because that's actually how you can show them appreciation in the workplace.
That's such a beautiful thought, and it's so unique. I've never heard that before, and I think that's really fascinating. And I mean, maybe I'm attributing this in my mind as to something that you said earlier, which is that you really understand people based on your previous experiences, and it's really fascinating the way that you obviously know it's not we're no stranger to the fact that you have to cater your appreciation differently.
Yeah.
But to have your staff do that is
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, I think it's really important too. Because again, I have to remind myself, even in like my marriage, my husband and I have very different love languages. And we've had multiple conversations about this. My husband is acts of service. So him showing him that he loves me means when I open up my glove box in my car, there's like granola bars and like food, and like he'll do things, or he'll fill my car up with gas or whatever it is. And I am fully words of affirmation. And so, but I have to remind myself that what he actually needs me to do is acts of service for him. That's how do you know what I mean? And he actually at one point put a reminder in his phone to write me nice text messages, because that's what I need. I need words of affirmation too. I am very much big on feedback. It's a miracle that I never joined a cult, because if someone was just like, told me all these nice things, I'd probably just follow them.
Yeah. Drink the Kool-Aid. Yeah.
April, you're beautiful. Come over here. And I'd be like, okay, I'm in.
Fine.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Say less.
Okay, I'm selling everything, joining this cult. Yeah. So it's an important piece of like every aspect of our life, I think. And it sounds very woo-woo, but again, if we're looking at like EQ and understanding other people and how we can work with other people, it's a big piece.
Absolutely.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to circle back on something that you said in your TED Talk that really resonated with me, which was that you can't change your past. I'm going to butcher the quote, so I apologize. But you can't change your past, but you are responsible for changing the narrative of your future. What does that mean?
So I saw, this is so funny too, because that quote is, your past may not be your fault, but rewriting the narrative of your future is your responsibility. And if you can believe it, I saw this like very random inspirational video once upon a time by Will Smith, of all people. This was like 2014. And he was actually talking about cheating, which is funny because now we know like Jada Pinkett Smith and all of these things. But he was like, in this video, he was like, it's not your fault if your partner cheated on you. But it is your responsibility to take those traumas and figure out how to make a life out of that. And I've taken that quote into so many different areas of my life, because there are so many things that are not our fault. And I talked about this recently because we recently let someone go at Toast. And this woman was very much in like victim mentality. And I was explaining to that woman's leader, I was like, listen, there are people who are going to stay stuck in fault, and it'll eat us alive if we sit there and be like, well, whose fault was this and whose fault was that? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. None of it matters whose fault it is, because it affected your life. And now it is your responsibility to figure out how you're going to move forward from that. And I think staying stuck in fault is where we stay stuck in these awful places of resentment, which eats us alive and only makes us sick, of course, or it keeps us in this really negative mental health space, as opposed to having hope, focusing on the future, solving for things. And like at the end of the day, it wasn't my fault that I had a parent who was not able to be a parent to me, but it is my responsibility to build a life out of that and figure out what to do with those traumas. And so I remind myself often in things like, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. I do try and find my own fault in things. I do often sit back and think like, okay, well, where's my piece in this? What would I have done differently? But in terms of laying blame on other people, I think I've seen a lot of people in the world who get stuck in that and trying to find, who to blame for it. But at the end of the day, it simply doesn't matter.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. None of it matters.
Love that thought.
Yeah.
I think it's this extreme ownership mentality is that, you can find some sort of fault of your own in everything that happens, which I think is important, but not blaming others is the more crucial part there, right? And just, handling the cards that you've been dealt to the best of your ability.
Totally. Yep. And I think in order to move forward in a healthy way as well, you do have to let go of that. I used to have a really great practice whenever I was, and I don't do it as much anymore, I wish that I did, but whenever I was in a negative space like that, someone once taught me that anyone that you are trying to blame or frustrated towards or have resentment towards, you're actually supposed to continuously wish them the best. And so I now am very, very, very close friends with my ex-husband. But when we first separated, I was like full of resentment and we were not getting along and things were tough. And someone gave me the advice at that time, every night before I went to bed, I would be like, I hope he ends up so happy. And I hope that he makes all the money in the world. And I hope he's so successful and da-da-da-da-da. And I would repeat these things that I did not feel and I did not believe in the moment, but it was actually helping me get over it. And in repeating these things, it actually came true. I actually did start wishing these things for him. And we are really good friends now. And he is very happy and he is super successful. And it helped relieve my own resentment. And so I do that even at work. I'm like, I'm gonna have empathy for this person. I wish the best for them. I hope that their company goes really well. And I flip it on its head so that it doesn't eat me alive.
I think that practice is beautiful. It might turn out a little bit differently if you did that out loud towards them.
Oh yeah, totally. I hope you get everything that's coming to you.
Every night. You're like, that'd be so funny.
But it is a good practice. It's actually a step in Alcoholics Anonymous, if you can believe it. And someone who was in that program taught that to me because I think there's pieces. I'm personally not in that program and not a big believer in it. But there are practices like that I think you can take into any piece of your life. Because resentment is not great. And I think when you look at people who are revengeful or, filled with self-hate or, negative thoughts, a lot of it is driven by resentment. And to me, that practice is an antidote to it.
Yeah. What does success look like to you?
Success has changed so much for me. For when I was younger, if I could go back, I would wish that I would put more emphasis on loving myself sooner because I think success comes with like confidence and health and freedom. And freedom is something that I've been able to have with this job as well, just to like build my own life and pick and choose the clients that I want to work with. And so when I think about success, I think about my health often too. And I used to think it was like the cover of magazines and Forbes and awards and stuff like that. But if you don't have all those other pieces with it, none of it matters.
For those who are listening that are struggling with exactly what you said, which is loving yourself sooner, or maybe they just don't see that in themselves or they're not sure where to look, what's your advice?
Get a psychologist. That's honestly, it's been life-changing to me. Like I said, I've been working with her for 10 years, but she does a really good job of like helping me see. Yeah.
April, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for having this conversation.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.